So House of the Dragon Season 1 has come and gone, and I definitely have some thoughts about this series. So spoilers are ahead, you are being warned right now. So House of the Dragon Season 1, is it a return to form for the Game of Thrones franchise? And my right off the cuff answer, I'd have to say yes. I think House of the Dragon has brought back respectability to the Game of Thrones franchise. Now, does it make up for all the shortcomings of the last season of Game of Thrones, or even maybe the last 2 seasons of the original Game of Thrones show? No, of course not, because that's kind of its own thing, but still it is good to see that the Game of Thrones franchise can put out a really good product. I would say House of the Dragon Season 1 is as good as one of the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. I personally would put it up there. I really would. I think House of the Dragon has gone back to what made Game of Thrones great. All of the family turmoil, all of the political backstabbing, who's going to sit on the Iron Throne, and there's some fantasy to it, of course, like with the dragons, and then they talk about the Song of Ice and Fire a little bit, but of course they're not going to touch on that here, but they do talk about it. But they have all the things that made the first few seasons of Game of Thrones great here in House of the Dragon. And you can feel that House of the Dragon is actually based off of the George R.R. Martin books, because the first few seasons of Game of Thrones was the same case, and obviously he hasn't finished the Game of Thrones series, and then the writers for the show had to make up stuff, so on and so forth. You've heard this 1,000 times on YouTube at this point. But for House of the Dragon, you can feel that this adaptation is adapted from Martin's books, and my goodness, is it a really good show. Now, I'm sure there's some people that will hate Game of Thrones no matter what now because of the ending of the show. Okay, go for it. Just know you're missing out on a really good show. And I'm sure some people out there will always hold the first few seasons of Game of Thrones near and dear, and they won't rank this one as high, and I completely understand that. But I do think House of the Dragon Season 1 is as good as Season 1 of Game of Thrones. Maybe it's even better. I haven't seen Season 1 of Game of Thrones in a long time, but off the top of my head, from my memory, I do think House of the Dragon at least is an equal partner or even better. And before we get any further in this video, just know that this video is not going to be an in-depth review of the series. I'm just more going to kind of hit on the main points of the series, and if it's kind of a return to form to what we know Game of Thrones to be, which is an elite television show and or an elite television franchise or property. So this Game of Thrones show, House of the Dragon, is set roughly 200 years before what we know in the Game of Thrones show, and it follows the Targaryen family, and then it follows the kind of march to war of Rhaenyra's Targaryens and then Alicent's Targaryens. And then Alicent's are the Greens due to her being a high tower, and then Rhaenyra is, I believe, the Blacks. She ends up going by the Black Queen eventually, I believe, but as of right now, at the end of the show, I believe one are the Blacks and one are the Greens to kind of separate the two. And going forward in the show, we will see those two women go at it through their houses, and one Targaryen will prevail. And I think we all kind of have a good feeling of who will prevail, but it just is a matter of who's going to fall in the process. But let's jump back to the start of the show. The start of the show, we see King Viserys being anointed as king, and then after that, we are fast forward a little bit more of him trying to have an heir that isn't Rhaenyra. He's trying to have a male heir with his first wife. That doesn't go too well. Eventually, he ends up marrying Alicent, and that's after he names Rhaenyra the future queen. And of course, a lot of people don't like that, so on and so forth. They want, a male heir to be the king after he dies. Of course, this is a huge deal, and a lot of the series is pretty much Rhaenyra waiting for Viserys to die for her to take her claim as the one true queen. So eventually, once Viserys dies, Alicent makes her son king, and she does that in front of all the townsfolk and makes a big deal about it and claims him as the one true king. And of course, that ruffles everyone else's feathers, who bent the knee to Rhaenyra, that she's the one true queen. And that's pretty much the show in a nutshell so far. There's, of course, a ton of infighting, a ton of turmoil, a ton of incest, all that great stuff that makes Game of Thrones what it is. Now, some real dynamic performances and characters that I've liked so far, honestly, all of them have been terrific. Honestly, like, this show is really, really good. I think the only gripe I would have at this exact moment is House of the Dragon Season 1 is on the slower side when it comes to action, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of action. Again, it feels in line with Game of Thrones Season 1. I'm not even that mad about it, because I know we're going to get plenty of action in Season 2, and if there's a Season 3, 3. Like, a war is beginning. We're going to get plenty of action. And even with that said, we saw plenty of action scenes. There are plenty of great characters in this show. There truly are. All the actors for the characters remain the same except for Rhaenyra and Alicent. They age up those characters with different actresses. And I personally feel that both actresses that portray the characters do a terrific job. I think all 4 of them who portray the 2 characters were all great in their own right. But my highlighted characters I have to mention though in House of the Dragon is Damon, Viserys, and Rhaenyra. Kind of the 3 main characters in this show are major standouts in my opinion. The younger Rhaenyra, I thought she was wonderful. I thought she was super captivating and I thought she did a awesome job. I didn't want her to leave the show, to be completely honest. When the older version of Rhaenyra took over, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little hesitant and it took maybe an episode for me to get really used to her. And after that, I saw that she was portraying a different version of Rhaenyra. You know, she was older, wiser, more mature. I was all in. She did a great job and she's going to continue to do a great job for sure. But the Rhaenyra character as a whole though, my goodness, what a great character, right? I'm so excited to see where that character is going to go from here because season 1 was awesome. Damon's a great character. Talk about a anti-hero in a way, and he's a villain of some sort early on in the show to being, you know, the queen's king consort husband, you know, ruling an army here pretty soon. Like all the stuff, like you don't know where he lies. He's loyal to Rhaenyra and the Targaryen name to an extent, you know, other long as not Alicent's Targaryens. Beyond that, you don't know where Damon's going to fall most of the time, and that's what makes him such a interesting and great character. The best character from another show I can compare Damon to as of right now is Negan from The Walking Dead. What Negan's kind of turned into in The Walking Dead. Yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's kind of an anti-hero now, kind of a good guy, but still sometimes you kind of just wait for him to snap. You don't know what side he's going to fall on, and maybe even a little Shane from The Walking Dead. But either way, Damon is a great character in House of the Dragon, and I hope we get to see him for a few more seasons. I hope they don't kill him off right away. I really want to see how his character develops over time. And then of course we have to talk about King Viserys. Paddy Considine, I think that's how you say his name. I probably butchered that, but that's okay. The man who portrayed King Viserys, I thought did a fantastic job. Talk about a sympathetic character, all his hardships through leprosy, wanting to do right, wanting to have a legacy, wanting to do right by his people and his family, you know, be a good king overall. He's definitely one of the most kind-hearted people in like Game of Thrones history, and for him to be a king, it was very interesting to see. And I thought his portrayal of the character was simply fantastic. I thought it was great. I'm sure there's some other standout things from the show that I'm not remembering right now. I don't have a script to look at or anything, but to kind of jump back to the overall premise of this video, the Game of Thrones franchise has returned to form without a doubt in my mind. I think House of the Dragon is really, really great. If you're hesitant about checking it out, you should do so right now. If you at all liked the original show, you need to check out this show. It is so good. It takes you back. It makes you remember all the great times from the original Game of Thrones show, but it's even better because it's new content and it's just as good. It's definitely probably one of the best shows I've watched here in 2022, and I doubt anything coming out over the next 2 months is going to beat it out. To simply put it, I can't wait for season 2. Sadly, we have to wait, I believe, 2 years for season 2 to come out. I believe it's not going to come out until 2024, sometime in that year, so it's going to be a while, but you know what? Good things come to those who wait, and that's okay. Whenever it comes out, I'll be ready, and I'm sure many others out there will be ready to see it too. With that said, what are your thoughts on this show? Do you think it's one of the best 2022? Do you think it kind of helps restore some of the damage that the original show did? Let me know down in the comment section below, and while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.